Alright guys, so welcome back to our round 3 feature match here, Wednesday Night Modern from Lost Legion Games and Comics in South Charleston, West Virginia. We've got, on your left, the undefeated player Troy King is 2-0 tonight. He got paired down against Joe Lewis, who is 1-1. We just saw Joe in the last round with his blue-white deck win a close one against the red-green Shaman's deck. A very fun deck out of Sam Hanna. And he advances to the de facto finals tonight against Troy's green-white deck, featuring all the requisite hate bears you could expect. More importantly, Troy with a turn 1 Aether Vial, which is going to go a long way against the counter-heavy deck of Joe. But this blue-white control deck, as we've seen earlier tonight, Joe's basically playing an homage to the old Caw Blade deck more than he's playing an actual blue-white control deck. He's playing Squadron Hawks, he's playing Blade Splicers, he's playing Vendilion Cliques, Snapcaster Mages. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a copy of Sun Titan in there somewhere, along with an equipment package. So, again, another deck we're seeing tonight that's not necessarily at the top tables when it comes to popular deck archetypes at major tournaments, but nevertheless a bunch of good cards that still know their way around a game of Magic. So again, I don't know who's exactly favored here. The turn 1 Aether Vial seems to put Troy in a pretty good spot here, but a lot of Troy's creatures somewhat dwarfed by Blade Splicers. We'll see what he can muster up. So Troy casting a Leonin Arbiter and Tectonic Edge are brutal in combination. Troy likely has another 2-drop that he wants to shoot in off of his Aether Vial. Though if it was a Thalia, he would likely have put that in during Joe's upkeep at the latest. But in fact, it's a Voice of Resurgence. Path to Exile on the Voice of Resurgence. For some reason, Joe deciding to back up and do that, and now is very proud of himself, despite the fact that he passed the turn back. I don't know. I think we need to pick our spots wisely here if we're going to brag about plays. So, Troy not ticking up his counter to his Vial to 3 here, so I'm not sure if he just missed that or if he's choosing to leave it on 2. So tapping 4 for Linvala, Keeper of Silence. Joe's going to read it. If he reads it and then counters it, that's very frustrating, but he does let it stick. So Linvala is shutting down creatures' activated abilities. Not sure if Joe's deck actually has any of those. We do see a Sword of Feast and Famine in his hand. So more than anything, Linvala doing a good job of just keeping Joe to playing fair Magic here, as Joe can't. He would have otherwise been able to cast and equip his Sword of Feast and Famine, attack and untapped all his lands. Heck, he could have played Gideon and it would have been 2009 all over, or 2010 all over again. So just passing back, so no Vial activation. He takes it up to 3 at this point, and then passes back. So he's going to be wary of that Arbiter. If he does tap out, Joe's going to likely get Stone Rained twice, as you can activate the second Tech Edge in response to the first one and still get an opponent that has less than 4 lands, though it wouldn't matter in this situation, I guess. So we're going to Tech Edge, targeting Glacial Fortress. Oh, I keep saying Tech Edge, but I'm thinking of Ghost Quarter. So pre-combat here, we're going to waste Cavern and a Glacial Fortress, and then we're going to use the mana to force Joe to play out a Restoration Angel ahead of combat, so Troy's not going to run his Arbiter into anybody. He's just going to pass back, leaving Vile up on 3. But Joe in a pretty bad spot here, down to just 3 lands. He has a clock on board, but it's not a race he's necessarily going to win. But there's a Sword and Feast and Famine. So he can untap, put that on his resto, make it a 5/6, and make it very difficult for Troy to effectively block it. And there is the Thalia. Somewhat too late here, as Troy can't effectively attack in, and we know he's going to eat he's going to have to throw his Linval under the bus unless he wants to keep Joe from untapping. Though Troy is playing Loxodon Smiter, so he could get the ultimate blowout here of pitching a Smiter to a Sword Trigger and living the dream. So Troy pathing the resto during his main phase. Obviously you can wait till Joe equips to do that, but you also allow him to untap and have access to mana to counterspell it. Obviously Joe at this point only representing a Spell Pierce, which he surely did not side in this matchup. And a Spell Snare, which is not good at countering paths, so smart play by Troy to play around Joe's possible outs in that situation, and he's looking a lot better now. And Price pairing very nicely with... And there's a Supreme Verdict, so we figured that was coming when he suicided his Hawk. End of turn, though, we're going to load up with a Loxodon Smiter here. And with Joe tapped out, we can Ghost Quarter his Hallowed Fountain if we want to, which is probably what we're going to do, I would think. So serve in for 4 here. Drops Joe down to 10. Oh, I'm sorry, the Arbiter is out of play, so that play doesn't really matter at this point. Best to save your Ghost Quarters at this point for Celestial Colonnades. So we know Joe's going to have creatures to put his sword on, as he's drawn several off his Squadron Hawk. And we're going to see come down now. Go get the last one out of the deck. So there's a question in the chat about Troy only paying 1 for the path with Thalia out, which he did. Thalia probably the addition to casting cost most missed by players, because it seems like it should be asymmetric, but it is symmetric, though I think in that case Troy had a Horizon Canopy open, so it wouldn't have mattered. It's just the life point, but at some point it's up to the players to remember that, so something missed there. We'll see if it comes back to affect the game at all. So we play a Hawk, we suit it up with a sword, we play another Hawk. So Joe tapped out here. We'll see what Troy comes up with it's a Sword of Fire and Ice, but unfortunately for Troy does not have the 5th mana he would need to equip it this turn and go ahead and serve in, as he's already cycled through 2 Tectonic Edges in this game. So Joe draws a cantrip. Serve in with the sword. Troy discards an Aether Vial. Not sure why he didn't just play that out last turn. Not sure why. I'm not sure the extra 1 life point is going to be worth the potential mana later in the game. He is going to cycle his Horizon Canopy, though. Let's see what he draws there. Just on body language, doesn't look like he's too excited. So we're going to equip up our sword to our Loxodon Smiter. Joe has a path. Pardon my stumble there, as it's become difficult to talk. So Troy's going to fall further behind here, as he still has that Aether Vial on 3 and nothing to do with it. So Joe serves in with the team again for 4 damage, but more importantly, knocks a card out of Troy's hand and untaps all of his lands. So Joe in a pretty good spot here. And there's a Noble Hierarch. Otherwise not really impressive, other than the fact that we can he is going to make Joe wisely going to make Troy tap out here to land the creature. So he can't equip the sword, and it'll further limit him later in the game. Plus, with that Aether Vial, it's very unlikely that it would matter. And there's the blowout, as Troy discards to the Feast of Famine trigger with the Wiltly Fleege. So now he's representing a whole heck of a lot of damage. He can suit up that Sword of Fire and Ice on his Noble Hierarch, still represent a reasonable clock here, even if Joe has a Snapcaster or another path. Just one card in Troy's hand, so we are going to suit up the sword onto the Noble Hierarch. Joe thinking about it, but likely this is just Hollywood at this point. I guess if he has a Snapcaster, he can do that in combat as well, so it's not necessarily that bad. But I would think he would want to do it in combat no matter what, so that he can't re-equip to the Liege. So, no, Joe, looks like Joe has 2 cards in hand. No, maybe just 1. Question in the chat about why not put the sword on the Liege. The Liege would hit harder, but this way you represent 2 reasonable threats. Cryptic Command, going to tap down your team and draw a card likely. And that's what he does. So we're going to fog for a turn here. Excuse me, passing back. So Joe with 1 card in hand draws a second off the top. It's a Gitaxian Probe. We're going to see a Mirren Crusader. So a bit of a mistake there, as Troy could have floated mana from his Noble Hierarch in response to the Cryptic Command, and then cast his Mirren Crusader, but he's going to lose it. Well, no, he's not going to lose it. He's going to, in response to the trigger, Violet in. So Troy is better playing his deck than I am, so I should give him credit for that, not assume that I'm the only one who sees these things. So Violet in response. Looks like we had life totals wrong here. Joe keeping track of it on paper off to the side here. So Joe's still in a good spot here. He has 2 cards. I can't tell what they are. But facing down a formidable army here from Troy. Troy is not dead on board as it stands, barring a Restoration Angel here at end of turn. Not sure why Troy did that. I think he's now laughing about it, thinking that he made some kind of mistake. Sword on the Double Striker here. And we're going to serve in with everybody? I'm not sure I would have done any of this. I think I'd just leave the sword on the Hierarch and attack with everybody and make Joe chump block 2 of them. So there's a Blade Splicer. The chat mentioning that Joe is missing equipping his sword to the untapped Hawk, which seems incredibly bad considering the amount of mana that Joe has. So just serving in with the equipped Hawk. So Troy down to his last out here. So trying to figure out exactly what he needs to draw on this spot, if anything, to get through here. Even Mind Sensor would get the job done, as it could block the equipped Hawk. So going to serve in with the 2 big guys here. 4/4 double striking Mirren Crusader, no 5/5 double striking Mirren Crusader, and a 4/4 Wiltly Fleege. Last card in his hand was a land, so a few missteps by the players here. Not sure it ultimately decided the game, but Joe Lewis off the back of a Sword of Feast and Famine gets game 1. These guys go to our sideboards. So game 2 starts off with a turn 1 Aether Vial. So Troy with turn 1 Aether Vials in both games, but in game 1 didn't seem to have anything he could cheat into play. Drew a lot of lands, though 2 of them were tech edges. So, Joe, not sure why Troy is so aggressively ghost quartering against a deck that plays Celestial Colonnade. As we were talking about before, here's the problem with Modern, especially in a relatively small Magic community like we have here in West Virginia. You don't get to play the Eternal formats that often. In fact, Troy goes to school out of state, is not in town too often throughout the year. So a lot of these intricacies about the format you don't pick up simply from lack of experience with the format. So let's hope that Ghost Quarter doesn't come back to bite him. He obviously does have another one, but no mana source. So if Joe can somehow get rid of that Aether Vial, Troy's going to look not unlike a fool. Comment in the chat saying the stream is very well done. Haven't watched before, but it's well done. We appreciate your feedback and hope you'll join us in the future for our weekly F&M streams, as well as other stuff. So Troy's on the mono brown lands here. 2 Ghost Quarters and a Tech Edge. And he is going to Ghost Quarter his own Tech Edge after floating mana. He's going to get a green mana source and feed whatever he draws into the Path to Exile that we know Joe is representing since he played his turn 1 Hallowed Fountain untapped. There's a Path to Exile, which I don't know why Joe did, because it basically does the exact same thing of giving Troy another land. So there's a Squadron Hawk. So Joe plays a Squadron Hawk on turn 3 this turn. We know he's going to follow that up with a Celestial Colonnade that he nearly played already. Fetching out 2 more Hawks, and they're going to pass the turn back to Troy. Most importantly, let's see if Troy vials something in. Possibly a Voice of Resurgence in this spot. If it was Thalia, we would have already seen it, I'm sure. No, so he just takes it up to 3 here. So pretty aggro out of Troy. Most of his creatures are going to be 2-drops, not unlike this Thalia, which is going to stick since Joe is tapped out. So Joe plays a 3rd land on an irrelevant, likely naming Angel. Could also be naming Wizard for Snapcaster and Vendilion Clique. Could also name Human for Blade Splicer and Snapcaster. But I don't know, I couldn't hear what he said, and to be quite honest, I don't feel like sticking my head out and asking him. So here comes a Blade Splicer. Seems like Joe always has it. And Troy is going to vial in a Loxodon Smiter here. No, an Aven Mind Sensor. So we've already pointed out that Joe's deck is not playing fetch lands, so it's not going to be nearly as good here. We can serve in with the Mind Sensor and get 2 damage in here. It's not going to block, it should be attacking. It's the old adage. Troy agrees and serves in for 2 and then passes the turn back. So 2 of the cards in Joe's hand we know are Squadron Hawks. He has a Cryptic as well. Looks like Sword of Feast and Famine drawn again. We saw it take over game 1. We'll see how it does in game 2 here. So Loxodon Smiter, or Golem token serving in. Troy is going to vial out a Loxodon Smiter and attempt to block. And then Joe is going to Echoing Truth it back to hand. Joe's citing in Echoing Truth, not sure exactly why, but that is his prerogative. Well, it's likely pretty good if you're citing out all of your counter magic, as Aether Vials make most of Joe's main deck counter spells relatively useless. So before blockers, Smiter is bounced. Then the Thalia serves in this time with the Golem away. Troy has an O-Ring in his hand, but not a 3rd land to cast it. It just passes the turn back. We know we're going to vial in a Smiter here at some point. 4 mana for Sword of Feast and Famine. This is going to be a huge blowout for Joe, or for Troy, if he can draw. Well, no, he doesn't need a third land, he needs a 4th land here, so that he can cast his Oblivion Ring because of his own Thalia. So he's in a relatively bad spot here. So Joe's serving in just with the Squadron Hawk. I guess Joe's playing for the long game here, trying to wind up 6 mana so he can cast and equip his sword all in the same turn. Not a bad strategy. So we're going to Path to Exile the Golem token at end of turn. And Joe almost forgot the Mind Sensor trigger, but he does run good and catch an island off the top. Troy now lamenting the that run good outside. So here's the Vial activation. The chat pointing out pretty good point that if Joe does have Vendilion Clique still in his deck, and if he has in his hand, more importantly, in response to the Vial activation, casting Clique targeting your opponent and shoving whatever they have could be a giant blowout. But Joe either not seeing that or does not have Vendilion Clique in his hand. The latter probably more likely. This time, Troy vials in a Mirror Crusader, and before combat, Joe is going to tap the team and draw a card. At this point, there might be some pause to consider bouncing the Aether Vial, giving Troy's relative mana problems. But just drawing a card, always a good option. So there is 3 mana for Sword of Fire and Ice. Looks like Joe has both swords in his hand already. So that's going to stick unless we somehow have instant speed answer, or we can vial it again. He's going to put it on a Hawk and then serve in here. So I guess we're going to do 2 damage to the Mirror Crusader and draw a card. Troy down 12 here. In step, the Loxodon Smiter's showing up. And let's see what Troy can muster up on his turn. So Joe tapped out. I guess the best draw here is a Wiltleaf Liege, and with Troy ticking his vial up to 4, that's indicative of a Wiltleaf Liege. So he either has it or he is knocking the top of his deck and hoping to draw it, as it's one of likely the only outs he has. We're going to block the Smiter. So no shenanigans, just put Joe down to 8. Putting Joe down to 8. Let's see what... Troy follows up with a Noble Hierarch. Chat indicated we may have missed some more Thalia taxes, which wouldn't surprise me, to be perfectly honest, but the players on there need to be on their guard to maintain their own game state. Try to catch as much as I can, but I've been up since 6:30. I can't catch it all myself. So serving in, we're going to shoot Thalia here. And it looks like we're going to wipe the board with the Supreme Verdict. We're going to go down to 6 here. Pretty ballsy from Joe. Revealing Wiltleaf Liege, O-Ring, and Scavenging Ooze. I don't think we can afford to sandbag the Supreme Verdict anymore. Unless you want to play out your Hawks to chump block, but then you're potentially dead to Path to Exile. I think you just have to cast the Verdict here, don't you? So there's a Squadron Hawk. Joe going to see if there's any more in his deck. Nope, just going to take this opportunity to shuffle. Which is not necessarily advantageous at this point, but obviously freshens up the top of his deck, should he know that. In Standard, it was always crucial with Jace the Mind Sculptor, as you could play pseudo Legacy by brainstorming and then shuffling away with the Hawk. So not sure what's going on here. I think by this line what Joe's trying to do is bait Troy into playing that Wiltleaf Liege and then killing him. I don't know what's in his hand. It's likely a Cryptic Command, I guess. If he has Cryptic as well. We do not vial in the Liege here. There's a Vendilion Clique. During draw step, a lot of things going on here that I don't necessarily understand. I don't know if they are the correct lines of play. Why Troy did not vial in at end of turn. Why he's not activating his... removing the O-ring. So Troy not activating his vial because he has two Wiltleaf Lieges. He does draw his replacement card off the click. Seems like this line is susceptible to a Path to Exile. So we know the Wiltleaf Liege is coming in. Serve with everybody. If Joe has another path, he should just go and buy a lottery ticket, because he has run as good as possible in this game, despite choosing some questionable lines. And with the second Liege in his hand, Troy could have vialed in the last Liege, vialed in another one for the pump effect. So I'm not sure what our angle is here. Though if Joe's trying to bait him into playing those Lieges out so that he can get max value off his Wrath, it's working relatively well. So we are going to double block the Smiter. We're going to vial in the Liege to save it. And then Joe is going to, I imagine, respond with Path. Otherwise, this doesn't make a whole hill of beans sense. Unless Joe somehow forgot about the Wiltleaf Liege, in which case that's even worse. Yikes. Good grief, Joe runs so good. I don't even know why they keep playing, because Joe's just going to draw whatever he needs off the top. So now we're going to be able to trade with the Smiter. Just going to take 2 from the Mind Sensor. So Joe down to 4 though he has an equipped unblockable creature at this point. Troy with only 1 unknown card in his hand. It's a Path to Exile on the bird while Joe's tapped out, so Troy may be able to steal this one. Seems like these guys have, well, we know he's not going to be able to steal it because Joe's going to untap, play Supreme Verdict, follow that up with a Squadron Hawk, and if he has another land, re-equip his sword. So this has all worked out pretty well for Joe, despite a line last turn which may have had him dead on board. Troy making some, what I would call interesting decisions regarding his Aether Vials and vialing in Wiltleaf Lieges. But that's why you play the games, folks. You can't learn if you don't play. In Modern, one of the formats we play not as frequently here. So there's 3 mana for a Squadron Hawk. Why are we not, I don't understand why we're not clearing the board when we have no creatures in play. And Colonnade. There's a Sword of Feast and Famine. So Joe's going to equip that to his Hawk. chat now losing it because of all the missed triggers. So for all those of you who wonder why we don't stream more Legacy and Modern events, this is why. Is because people are unfamiliar with cards, the lines of play are not necessarily top-notch, then I have to sit in here and listen to everyone complain about it, then put it on YouTube and listen to everyone on YouTube complain about it, and as a grown man I've got better things to do than waste my Wednesday night coming in here and getting berated for it, so that's partially why we don't have more coverage of these events. So enjoy this one while it lasts. So, Joe blocks the Mind Sensor with his Squadron Hawk to preserve his life total. Then Troy follows up with the Scavenging Ooze, which can go to a 3/3 immediately off of the Horizon Canopy. So again, Joe left with no attackers, though he does have a Celestial Colonnade, but he's 1 mana away from being able to activate it and equip it with the Sword of Feast and Famine. So it looks like this is the turn that we're going to Verdict. And I've lost count of how many Squadron Hawks Joe has. So, in response, rather than gain a life, Troy's going to use his Hierarch mana to cycle his Horizon Canopy and draw a card. And Joe follows that up by going down to 2. There's a Wiltleaf Liege. Viled in off of the Aether Vial, so the 3rd Liege we've seen this game. Joe's going to be forced to jump out with his Hawk. But now, more importantly, Joe has enough mana that he can activate his Colonnade, equip one of the swords next turn, and attack in. And there's a Thalia. Why do we not attack? I have no idea why we don't attack. That's... ugh. It's brutal even for me to watch. Oh, it's pro-green, I apologize. You guys got me so scared of missed triggers that even now I'm I'm misplaying and I don't even have a deck. So Hawk picks up a 2nd sword. Then the question is, can Hawk carry 2 swords? In its talons? I guess it can. Thematics be damned. So now Joe's remembering to re-equip creatures after combat. So not sure if Troy has an out here. I guess an O-ring on a Golem token. Even that would be good because Joe just has to chump block with his Blade Splicer. 3 mana for an Aven Mind Sensor. Before block, Joe has a path. Of course he has a path. And that's it, guys. So Joe Lewis wins tonight's 3-round standard tournament. His blue-white Caw Blade throwback deck is good enough to get there, taking out Troy King's green-white Hate Bears deck in the final round. Guys, thanks for watching. Apologize for quality of play. But that's what you get. Beggars can't be choosers when you got 6 people to show up on a Wednesday, in between major holidays. During college exam week, what are you going to do? So guys, that is going to be it for this week. I'm going to break things down and go outside. Maybe actually play Magic. I know it's often rumored, never actually seen. But I might actually go play a little bit of Magic. Thanks for watching, guys. If you wanted to catch out more coverage from us, make sure you follow us on various forms of social media. Zach Sells Magic is the username for all of it. Head over to our Facebook page and look for the post last Friday for this week's stream giveaway. F&M stream every week at 6:30. This week we're giving away a foil dual deck Nicole Bolas Planeswalker. Not the best thing we've ever given away, but it's still worth something. And then we'll be back on Friday for another stream. Make sure you join us for the next couple weeks, because I think we're going to take 2 weeks off for the holidays, as I'm going to be out of town. So can't guarantee what we're going to do past the 20th. So we'll do one this week, and then we'll do one next week. And then we'll see where it goes from there. But guys, thanks for watching. Hope you have a good rest of your week, and we hope to see you back here on Saturday. We'll have these up on YouTube tomorrow, and then I'll try to get the deck list from these guys should you want it, especially from Garrett's zombie pod list that we saw in the first round. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you guys later. Take care.